What if the smartest mind in the room was the one no one ever noticed? What if genius was hiding in a dusty shed built from broken parts, buried under mockery and poverty? Welcome to The Circuit Breaker, an original story about a boy who turns scrap metal into innovation, silence into strength, and dreams into a future no one saw coming. This isn't just a story, it's a journey of resilience, brilliance, and the unstoppable power of belief. So before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're into stories that inspire, challenge, and empower. We've got more original content coming your way. And after you've listened, let us know in the comments. What part of Malik's story moved you the most? Now take a deep breath and get ready. This is The Circuit Breaker. In the forgotten corners of Dry Creek, Kansas, a boy named Malik Turner scavenges through trash to find treasure, discarded wires, broken chips, and forgotten machines. Mocked by classmates and overlooked by teachers, Malik hides a powerful secret. He's building a working computer from scrap, piece by piece, with nothing but grit and imagination. When a visiting professor discovers his creation, Malik is thrown into a world of elite technology and fierce academic competition. But the path ahead is anything but smooth. As Malik faces pressure, prejudice, and the lingering weight of poverty, he must prove that brilliance isn't born in labs or polished classrooms. It can rise from the dust, and it can change everything. The Circuit Breaker is a story of resilience, invention, and the unbreakable spirit of a boy who refused to be defined by where he started. Stay tuned and discover how one mind can rewire the future. Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction. All characters, events, and places depicted are entirely imaginary and created for storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The Circuit Breaker is intended to inspire, educate, and provide moral lessons through narrative. It serves as a source of motivation and reflection, especially for those seeking hope, perseverance, and purpose. Viewer discretion is advised for interpretation, and the story should be enjoyed as a fictional journey of growth and discovery. Dust kicked up behind Malik Turner as he dragged his cart across the edge of Lincoln Park, his sneakers worn at the soles and one lace knotted from too many tears. The afternoon sun pressed down hard on the dry Kansas plains, turning broken sidewalks into small ovens and tin-roofed homes into slow-cooking pots of sweat. Malik's hoodie, 2 sizes too big and faded from deep red to dusty pink, clung to him as if it knew he couldn't afford to shed it. It had once belonged to his father, and no matter how many summers passed, Malik never stopped wearing it. The hoodie was armor. In a town that mistook poverty for weakness, Malik needed all the armor he could find. He pulled the cart past the community dumpster behind Carter's grocery store. His eyes scanned for glints of metal or wire poking through black trash bags and cardboard boxes. The cart was a clunky thing, a baby stroller stripped of its seat and filled with scrap. A rusted microwave. A cracked monitor. A mess of tangled cords he'd found hanging out the back of an old recliner someone dumped on Elm Street. People stared. They always did. "Yo, there goes the junkyard kid," said a voice from across the street. Malik didn't look up. He recognized the tone. It was Landon, the son of a local car dealer. Always in fresh clothes and clean sneakers, Landon made it his mission to remind Malik that he was poor, that he didn't belong, that he'd never be anything. "Maybe he's building a spaceship with that trash," another voice said, followed by a round of laughter. Malik caught the words, but he didn't flinch. He kept his head down, pushing the cart through heat and ridicule. By the time he reached the alley beside his grandmother's house, the sun had started to sink, casting long orange shadows across the chain-link fence. He opened the back gate with one hand, careful not to let it creak too loudly. Inside the house, his grandmother was probably asleep in her chair, Bible still in her lap, television humming static. She had taken on 3 jobs after his parents died. Her body had grown tired, her eyes dimmer, but her spirit never bent. She didn't know about the parts, or the computer. Malik wanted to show her when it was done, not before. He lifted the tarp off the old storage shed and rolled the cart inside. There, in the dark corners lit only by a desk lamp rigged from a broken floor lamp, stood his masterpiece in progress. The machine didn't look like much. A mismatched monitor. An old beige tower he'd gutted and reconfigured. Cords coiled across the floor like snakes in mid-strike. But inside that box, within the recycled processors and fans, something was alive. Something real. Malik sat in the creaky desk chair and powered it on. The screen buzzed, flickered, then turned blue. His fingers moved over the keyboard, typing lines of code with ease, each keystroke a language he had learned on his own. The books he borrowed from the library, Books on logic, syntax, operating systems were stacked beside him. Some had coffee stains, others were yellowed with time. But they were his teachers. He wasn't just building a computer. He was building a new reality. Each function he wrote, each program he debugged brought him closer to something he couldn't name, but felt deeply. It wasn't just about escaping poverty. It was about proving that genius could grow in silence, that intelligence wasn't reserved for the rich, that dignity wasn't earned through brand names or clean fingernails. Outside, a dog barked. The wind pushed against the walls like it always did in Kansas. But inside the shed, all Malik could hear was the soft clicking of his keys and the hum of something greater coming to life. Mornings came early for Malik Turner. Before the sun had fully crested the flat Kansas horizon, before the school bus had made its first turn down Sycamore Road, Malik was already moving. He washed his face in the chipped sink, brushed his teeth with a toothbrush worn flat at the bristles, and quietly checked on his grandmother. She always left a small note on the kitchen table before heading out to her morning shift at the diner. Today it read, "Left some eggs in the pan. Be good, baby. Love you always." He ate quickly and left the house with his backpack. One pocket filled with notebooks, the other with coiled wire, loose screws, and a half-broken USB stick he had found behind the library. School wasn't his sanctuary. It was a necessary gate he had to pass through daily. He kept his head down, stayed quiet in class, and waited for the final bell to release him back into the world where he could build. In math class, while the teacher droned on about integers and graphs, Malik filled the margins of his notebook with diagrams. Not doodles, designs. Power flow maps. Heat distribution schematics. Drafts of cooling systems made from old fan motors. His thoughts buzzed with technical precision, yet no one noticed. His hand would shoot up now and then, but when the teacher chose him and he gave a correct answer too quickly, she would pause, blink twice, and say, interesting guess." But he wasn't guessing. During lunch, Malik sat alone at the end of the table near the window, disassembling an old digital watch under the table with a mini screwdriver. The lunchroom swirled with laughter, gossip, and noise. Landon and his crew strutted from table to table like they owned the building. Landon stopped in front of Malik with his tray. "You gonna eat that, or you trading it for trash again?" he asked, nodding toward Malik's untouched sandwich. Malik didn't answer. He gently placed the watch face down and looked up. His eyes didn't carry anger, just the sharp, focused silence of someone who'd already outgrown the nonsense. "Man, you're weird," Landon muttered, walking off. Weird. Broken. All the things they thought he was. But Malik knew better. After school, he didn't go home immediately. He cut through the alley behind the old movie theater where a pile of discarded electronics waited. The owner, Mr. Duffy, had started setting things aside for Malik. A busted projector. A speaker with torn mesh. A cracked screen. Duffy didn't ask questions, just handed over the goods and gave a quiet nod. Some folks in the town saw what others didn't. Back at the shed, Malik returned to the motherboard. He had just wired a recycled capacitor into place the night before and wanted to test how it handled under strain. He'd built his own diagnostic software, borrowing logic from an outdated system manual he memorized at the library. The fan clicked on. The lights pulsed. He watched the data scroll like rain down a window. And then error. His eyes narrowed. He typed quickly, pulling up the log file. Something about voltage regulation. Too much draw from the power source. He leaned back and exhaled. Most kids would have called it a night. Malik took it as a challenge. He flipped through a notebook, scanned his sketches, and traced the error back to a rusted resistor he'd used because he hadn't found a better one. He knew what he needed. Something newer. Something intact. And he had a feeling he knew where to find it. That night, just past 9, he snuck out of the house. The sky was navy blue and cloudless. He biked across town, down gravel roads and past shuttered storefronts, until he reached the outskirts, where an old appliance repair shop had closed months ago. The back lot was chained, but Malik had crawled under the fence once before. He carried a flashlight and a small toolkit in his hoodie pocket. He moved fast, quiet. In the dark, the machines looked like tombstones. He crouched beside an old desktop tower and pried it open. Inside was a power board with a clean, copper-wrapped resistor, exactly the type he needed. He clipped it out, bagged it, and crawled back out without a sound. Back at the shed, he installed it and rebooted the system. This time, the diagnostics ran smooth. No error. No freeze. The system hummed at a steady pace. For the first time, he felt the whole machine breathe in rhythm, like it wasn't just parts anymore, but a body. Malik leaned back, exhausted, smiling faintly. This wasn't luck. It was work. It was knowledge. Piece by piece, wire by wire, he was rewriting his future. And nobody even knew his name. The air inside the shed felt heavy that Saturday morning, but Malik didn't notice. He was locked in. Hours had passed since breakfast, though he hadn't touched the plate of eggs his grandmother left on the kitchen counter. He'd barely slept. A program he'd been developing for weeks was finally ready to run its first full execution. Malik had designed it himself, modeled loosely after antivirus software, but leaner, faster, smarter. It wasn't just a patcher or a scanner. It was adaptive. Could learn. He called it Echo. He pressed the enter key. The screen filled with scrolling text, lines of logic, test scenarios, system calls, and threat emulation protocols. Echo didn't just search for viruses. It simulated them, created dummy bugs, and neutralized them in real time, learning how to spot similar threats on its own. Malik had coded the feedback loops manually, testing them with crude virus builds he cobbled together from open-source scripts. For anyone else, it might have looked like nonsense. But for Malik, it was music. Every line that ran successfully was a note, every command a rhythm. It was alive. He watched Echo isolate a test file, log the anomaly, rewrite the damaged line, and restore function, all in under 3 seconds. A grin tugged at the corners of his mouth. Not because he wanted applause. Not because he wanted to show off. But because for the first time in weeks, everything had worked perfectly. No smoke. No burnt wire. No shutdown. Just success. Later that day, he biked to the library and printed out 10 pages of his handwritten code, storing it safely in his backpack. He didn't know what he would do with them yet, but something told him to keep a copy, just in case. On his way home, he passed a flyer taped to a streetlight. He almost didn't stop. It was the kind of thing people ignored. Colorful paper, too many fonts, words like innovation, future, opportunity, terms that never meant much to kids like him. But something about this one made him pause. The Kansas State Tech Expo. Held just outside of Topeka. Free admission for local students. Special demos, coding challenges, and robotics labs. One day only. Malik memorized the date. It was 2 weeks away. That night, at the dinner table, he brought it up casually while stirring his soup. "Hey, Grandma," he said, not looking up. "You ever heard of the Tech Expo in Topeka?" She sipped her tea slowly, then nodded. "Sure have. Big deal, I think. Your uncle wanted to go once. Too far, too expensive." "Why?" Malik shrugged. "They're letting students in for free this year." She leaned forward a little. "And you want to go?" He nodded. Her eyes searched his face. "It's a long trip. I could maybe get that Tuesday off and take you. But we'd have to pack our own food and leave early. No hotels." Malik smiled. "That's fine." The 2 weeks passed like smoke. In that time, Malik worked on improving Echo. He added a real-time visual log, reorganized the user interface, and tried to make it simple enough that even someone who didn't code could see what it was doing. He had no plans to show it off. He wasn't going to the expo to compete. He just wanted to see what other people were building, maybe pick up some ideas. He packed Echo source code into a flash drive, just in case there was a chance to upload or demo it somewhere. The morning of the expo, they left before dawn. Malik wore clean jeans, his father's hoodie, and the backpack with the code tucked inside. His grandmother drove them in her old sedan, the engine humming louder than it should. The roads were empty for miles, long stretches of nothing but fields, fences, and telephone wires. When they arrived, Malik was wide-eyed. The expo center was massive. Tall glass doors. Bright banners. Music and voices echoing through the open courtyard. Inside were booths, robots rolling around on wheels, kids his age in crisp t-shirts demoing devices and gadgets Malik had only seen in magazines. He stayed close to the wall at first, absorbing it all. Drones lifted into the air on programmed flight paths. A group of girls were showcasing a phone app they had designed to detect allergens in school lunches. A college team was showing off a prosthetic hand that could mimic fine motor control. He was in awe, but none of it scared him. In fact, it made him feel like he belonged. Then he saw a sign that read, "System Diagnostics Lab, Interactive Network Sandbox." A thought stirred in him. This was a network simulation environment. If there was any place he could try it, really try it, it was here. He waited until the lab wasn't crowded. Then he asked one of the grad students managing the room if visitors could test external code. "Only if it's clean," the guy said. "We run it in a sandbox anyway, so no real danger." "You got something?" Malik nodded and handed over the flash drive. Minutes later, the room changed. Echo booted up on the lab's interface monitor, and within seconds, it began identifying vulnerabilities the grad students hadn't even programmed into the network. The software adapted quickly, refining its parameters and closing holes in the code. People started to gather. First a few, then a dozen. Among them was a man with salt and pepper hair, thick glasses, and a badge that read Dr. Lewis Granger, University of Kansas. He watched silently, his arms crossed. And as Echo continued to work, his expression changed, from curiosity to disbelief to something approaching awe. When it finished and the monitor displayed a clean report and self-exiting script, Malik backed away and nodded as if to say thanks for letting me try. But Dr. Granger stepped forward. "Where did you learn to write that?" he asked. Malik blinked. "Just taught myself." Dr. Granger looked at him, really looked at him. And in that moment, the room grew quiet. Something was about to change. Dr. Lewis Granger stood still, as if trying to make sense of what he had just witnessed. He leaned slightly toward the screen, his finger tapping the edge of the monitor, then turned back to Malik with a calm but pressing urgency in his voice. "You said you taught yourself?" he asked again, this time slower. Malik nodded, eyes cautious. "Yeah, I read a lot. Borrowed books. Took stuff apart." Dr. Granger knelt beside the chair Malik had been sitting in, not in a condescending way, but as if he were leveling the field between them. "Do you know what you just did?" Malik glanced back at the screen, then back at the man's face. "I think so. You didn't just run a scan. You improved the sandbox environment." Echo, was that the name? Adjusted its search method mid-scan and corrected a hidden protocol flaw that's been in our model for weeks. That wasn't code. That was intuition. Malik felt his cheeks get warm. He wasn't sure what to say. No one had ever talked about his work like that before. From the corner of the room, one of the grad students whispered something to another. Malik heard his name bounce softly between them. The room was still watching. His grandmother, who had stayed in the hall at first, peeked through the doorway. Her eyes scanned for Malik, and when she found him standing in the center of a group of people, she started walking his way, slow and careful. Dr. Granger rose to his feet and extended his hand. "I'm Dr. Granger. I teach advanced systems theory and digital architecture at the University of Kansas. I also head our Emerging Talent Scholarship Initiative. We look for young minds who aren't just smart, but extraordinary. You, Malik, is it? You've just proven you are both." Malik shook his hand slowly. The skin was calloused. A man who typed as much as he lectured. "What grade are you in?" the professor asked. "Ninth," Malik replied. Granger raised an eyebrow. "And this?" He motioned to the monitor. "You built this from scrap?" Malik nodded. "Yeah. Most of it came from dumpsters and junkyards." The professor's eyes softened. "Then I'm going to be honest with you. You don't belong in a junkyard. You belong in a lab. In a program. With resources, mentors, the space to let your mind breathe. I want to talk to your guardian." Malik's heart stuttered. "My grandmother." Granger turned as she approached. Her back was straight, and her gaze was firm, even as her eyes shifted between the professor and Malik. "Ma'am," Granger said with a polite bow of his head, "I just watched your grandson solve a problem it took my graduate students weeks to identify. I don't want to waste time. I want to offer him full scholarship mentorship. Housing, supplies, access to our summer coding program, and early admission into our pre-university track. All of it. Covered." She blinked. Her lips parted, but no words came. "I know it's a lot," he continued. "But you need to know, this boy is gifted. Beyond measure." She turned to Malik. "You made that?" she asked softly. He nodded. She exhaled long and slow, then smiled. "Yes," she said. "Yes, you can take him." Tears didn't fall right away. But Malik felt something loosen in his chest, something unspoken finally unclenching. The years of silence, the weight of being overlooked, the sneers, the loneliness, all of it seemed to shift, suddenly made light by the force of being seen. The rest of the expo passed in a blur. Dr. Granger introduced him to a few university staff members. They took down his information, gave him a packet with the scholarship details, and even offered to send someone to help him transition into the summer program. He was invited back the next week to tour the campus. That night, driving home under a sky littered with stars, his grandmother was quiet for most of the ride. But just before they turned onto their street, she reached over and gently touched his shoulder. "I always knew," she said. "Didn't know what it would be. Didn't know how. But I knew you were born for more than just surviving." Malik looked out the window, blinking away the tears he didn't want her to see. At home, in the shed, the computer still hummed, waiting for his return. But now it was more than a project. It was a key. a key that had finally opened a door that had always been locked. The University of Kansas rose like a silver and brick fortress under the early summer sky. It felt massive to Malik, not just in size, but in the hum of energy that seemed to pulse through its walkways. Students zipped past on scooters. Doors opened with coded badges. Every classroom had glowing glass boards, sleek monitors, and projectors that responded to voice commands. Malik had seen none of this in his school back in Dry Creek. He clutched his backpack tightly as he followed Dr. Granger through the main corridor of the tech wing. His eyes darted from room to room, labs filled with blinking machines, holographic displays, and clusters of students gathered around things he'd only seen in science journals. "You'll get your own station here," Dr. Granger said as they walked, his tone calm and direct. "We don't just teach code. We teach systems, infrastructure, security, innovation. But most importantly, we teach ownership." They stopped in front of a double door labeled Emerging Talent Lab. The room inside was spotless, minimalist, and quiet, at least for now. 5 workstations lined the far wall, each one waiting for a student. Malik's name was already tagged above one. "I know this must feel fast," the professor said, "but the world won't wait for brilliance. And I can already tell you're ahead of your time." Malik stepped into the room. The monitor on his station flickered to life with a gentle blue glow. A welcome screen appeared. "Welcome, Malik Turner. Session 1, Open Exploration." His hands twitched with anticipation. The first week moved like lightning. Malik was introduced to the other scholarship students, most of whom were older than him. Some were friendly, a few skeptical, and one, a tall girl with glasses named Joy, watched him closely, then nodded in silent approval when he fixed a kernel conflict that had stumped the whole lab. He didn't talk much, but his code did. He rebuilt Echo with cleaner interfaces and a modular expansion feature. He experimented with machine learning, training the system on fake attacks modeled after real ones from international case studies. He absorbed everything: theory, hardware, software, logic flows, quantum error correction, and more. Most nights he stayed late in the lab. Dr. Granger would sometimes walk by, hands in his pockets, and simply observe. Once, after Malik finished constructing a custom firewall for a mock data server, the professor spoke from the doorway. "You don't flinch when things go wrong," he said. Malik looked up, fingers still resting on the keyboard. "There's always a fix," he replied. "You just have to see the layers." The professor nodded. "That mindset will take you farther than talent alone." Not everything came easy. Malik had never used half the tools the others had grown up with. His typing was slower. He had to Google basic commands now and then. There were moments of self-doubt. But every time it hit, he would picture the shed back home. The battered wires, the flickering screen, the cracked resistor he'd risked a fence cut to replace, and remember what he'd built with nothing. So now, with everything at his fingertips, what excuse did he have not to go further? On the third Friday, the students were given a challenge. A simulation where each participant had to secure a virtual city's energy grid from multiple points of cyber attack. They had 3 hours to analyze, code, and deploy countermeasures. Most students panicked. Others plotted carefully. Malik dove straight in. He saw the system not as code, but as a city. Not as numbers, but as bridges, tunnels, traffic lights. He mapped out vulnerabilities like weak scaffolding on an old building, redirecting energy through backups, tricking the attacker's simulation into circling decoy data. With 15 minutes left on the clock, Malik's system hadn't just defended itself. It had isolated the attacker's source code and fed it back to the review board with a full threat report. The room fell quiet. Even Joy looked impressed. After the simulation, Dr. Granger pulled Malik aside. "There's going to be an opening next fall in our accelerated degree program," he said. "It's designed for second-year university students, but I'm going to put your name forward." Malik's eyes widened. "But I haven't even finished high school." The professor smiled. "Then we'll just have to make the school catch up to you." That weekend, Malik went back home for the first time in weeks. His grandmother made him sweet cornbread and black-eyed peas. The kitchen smelled like memory. They sat at the table and she asked him to tell her everything. He did. Not with pride, but with quiet wonder, as if still unsure it was all real. That night he stepped back into the shed. The wires still hung from the ceiling. The floor was still cluttered. But the glow of the computer he had built, the original Echo, still lit the small room. He smiled. Everything had changed. And yet nothing had. Malik knew he had changed. But Dry Creek hadn't. The old neighborhood looked the same: cracked sidewalks, rusted fences, kids throwing pebbles against a graffiti-tagged wall. He had grown taller, filled out a little, and walked with more certainty now. But back in his hometown, certainty didn't get you respect. Familiarity did. And to them, he was still just the kid who used to scavenge scrap behind liquor stores. He returned that Monday to visit his old school. The principal had invited him back to speak at an end-of-year assembly. A hometown success story, she called it. Malik wasn't so sure. The hall still reeked of wax and cheap sanitizer. The same flickering lights buzzed overhead. The lockers were dented. The faces? Mostly the same. He stepped onto the auditorium stage in front of 300 students. The microphone let out a squeal as the assistant principal adjusted it. Malik cleared his throat. "I used to sit in this crowd," he said, voice soft at first. "I used to walk these halls. Picked up lunch from the same cafeteria line. Took the same beat-up math books home. And I know what a lot of you think. Some people get out, most don't. Some are lucky, most aren't. But luck didn't build the computer I made in my grandmother's shed. That was grit. Curiosity. Long nights. I used what I had, and when that wasn't enough, I made what I needed." He paused. "Whatever's in your way, poverty, doubt, fear, it's not bigger than what you carry inside. You don't have to ask permission to build. You just build." There was polite applause. A few teachers smiled. The principal clapped with enthusiasm. But after the assembly, the mood shifted. Malik stood by the exit, greeting some of the students as they walked past. A few thanked him. One girl asked if he had a social media handle she could follow. But then came Darnell and his crew. They hadn't changed at all. Darnell was taller, bulkier now, with a chain around his neck and a bored look on his face. "Look who's back," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Malik the Machine." The others laughed. "Heard you got into some nerd school," said one of the boys. "Heard he builds robots from garbage," said another. Malik met their eyes calmly. "Not robots. Systems." Darnell smirked. "You still talk like a textbook. Thought you'd come back rich or something. You still live in that broken-down house." "No," Malik said. "I live on campus now." "Fancy," Darnell muttered, then added with a mock salute, "Well, keep repping the streets, Professor." They walked off laughing. Malik exhaled, but not with anger. With understanding. Not everyone wanted to change. Not everyone was ready to. That afternoon he visited the scrapyard. It looked smaller than he remembered. He walked the aisles of rust and ruin, fingers brushing old wires and forgotten metal. He stopped at the pile where he'd once found the motherboard that saved Echo's early design. It was still there, half buried, oxidized by time. A soft crunch of footsteps behind him made him turn. It was Joy. She wore a hoodie, jeans, and a pair of clear-frame glasses that caught the sun. "I figured I'd find you here," she said. "You followed me? I asked your professor where you were. He said this place was your beginning." Malik smiled faintly. "It was." She looked around. "I never had to do this," she said quietly. "I had access. My dad's a software engineer. My mom teaches robotics. But I've never built something from scraps. Never hacked together a working system from trash." "It wasn't trash to me," Malik said. Joy nodded. "I know. That's why I wanted to see it." She stepped beside him, quiet for a while. Then she said, "Some of the students back at campus, especially the older ones, they don't know how to take you. You're different." Malik turned to her. "Different how?" "You don't play for applause," she said. "You don't code for trophies. You just build. That scares people. Makes them wonder what you'll do next." Malik looked back at the pile of discarded parts. "I don't know yet." Joy nudged his shoulder gently. "That's what makes it exciting." As they walked back toward the road, Malik felt the weight of his past settle behind him, not like a burden but like a foundation. He could still hear the mocking voices of the crowd, but they didn't sting anymore. They were echoes in a tunnel he'd already passed through. He had bigger things ahead. He had purpose. He had people now, not just watchers but allies, peers. And in Joy, perhaps something even more. The city lights flickered in the distance as the sky deepened into gold. Tomorrow the lab. Next week, the advanced systems competition in Chicago. And beyond that, only the code knew. The auditorium in Chicago buzzed with anticipation. It wasn't like the school gymnasiums Malik was used to. This place had towering ceilings, rows of monitors glowing under soft blue lights, and banners bearing the logos of the world's top tech institutions. The National Systems Innovation Conference had gathered young engineers and prodigies from every corner of the country, and Malik Turner was among the youngest in the room. He wore his name badge clipped to his hoodie. It read Kansas Tech Delegate. Joy stood beside him, eyes scanning the hall. "Everyone here thinks they're the smartest," she whispered. "They might be, Malik replied. But they didn't build a working AI from scraps in a shed, she said, nudging him. So they're already behind. Malik grinned, but his stomach was tight. The final challenge, the circuit breaker, would be announced live. Teams had only 6 hours to design and implement a security system that could defend a simulated smart city grid from coordinated attacks, including data breaches, hardware failure, social engineering, and sabotage, all while maintaining normal city functions. There were no second chances. One slip, one exploit, and the system would crash. Malik glanced at the competition board. Teams from New York, San Francisco, Houston, Seattle. All of them packed with students older than him. Most came from elite programs. Some had already interned at major tech firms. He closed his eyes for a moment, took a slow breath, and remembered his grandmother's voice. You were born for more than surviving. Then the announcement came. The circuit breaker will begin in 5 minutes. Upload your frameworks. Prepare your protocols. This is not a drill. Malik and Joy sat at their station. Their monitors lit up with a virtual grid, hospitals, power plants, transit systems, financial centers, all tied into one master network. Any vulnerability could cascade into failure. It wasn't just about stopping attacks. It was about understanding the system before it fell apart. Joy began mapping threat zones. Malik stared at the code. And then he saw it, like he always did. The pattern behind the pattern. This isn't random, he said. They're using mimic layered attacks, masking a breach behind maintenance commands. Joy's hands flew across her keyboard. Got it? I'll set up a firewall fork. You handle the neural proxy. Malik wrote the code in a blur. He built a predictive scanner, one that didn't just block intrusions but adapted with each new attempt, mimicking the attackers and using their logic against them. It was Echo's older brother, stronger and faster, but still carrying the original spirit of its design. As the simulation clock ticked down, teams around the hall started showing signs of stress. Warnings popped up on their displays: breaches, overloads, data loss. A group from Silicon Valley scrambled as their smart grid collapsed under pressure. But Malik's system held. Not just held, it learned. By the final minute, their system had patched every vulnerability, isolated false commands, rerouted energy through alternate paths, and even identified the mock attacker's origin node, something no other team had managed. When the clock hit 0, the judges walked through the room with tablets in hand. They reviewed logs, scanned defenses, ran post-event simulations. And then the lead judge stepped onto the central stage and raised the mic. One team, she said, not only survived every attack, but enhanced their infrastructure in real time. They demonstrated foresight, innovation, and resilience. And they did it with a level of efficiency we have never seen from a first-year competitor. She looked straight at Malik. The winners of this year's Circuit Breaker Challenge are Malik Turner and Joy Chong, representing Kansas Tech. For a second he didn't move. Then Joy grabbed his shoulder and pulled him to his feet. The applause exploded around them. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. Some judges stood to clap. And for a long moment, Malik just stood there, staring into the lights, heart pounding in his chest, a flood of heat rushing through his limbs. On the screen above, their names appeared in bold letters. The Circuit Breakers. Later that night, after the press interviews and the trophy photos, Malik found a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The skyline glittered like a circuit board. Below, traffic moved like flowing code, endless, glowing, alive. Dr. Granger joined him, holding 2 cans of orange soda. I figured you don't drink champagne, the professor said, handing him one. Malik took it, popped the top, smiled. You made history today, Granger said. I just followed the layers, Malik replied. No, the professor said. You saw what no one else did. You broke through. From the junkyards of Dry Creek to the biggest tech stage in the country. Malik nodded. But I'm not done. Granger chuckled. I didn't think you were. There was a silence, then Malik said, I want to start something back home. A lab. A place where kids like me can learn. Build. No tests. No fancy equipment. Just space and people who care. The professor raised his can. Then that's what we'll do. They clinked cans. And as Malik looked out over the world ahead, he felt no fear. No doubt. Only code waiting to be written. Only futures waiting to be unlocked. Only circuits waiting to break. Here are 7 moral lessons drawn from the Circuit Breaker. 1. Greatness can come from the humblest beginnings. Malik Turner began his journey in Dry Creek, Kansas, a place forgotten by most maps, weighed down by poverty and resignation. He had no access to expensive computers, no Wi-Fi at home, no teachers trained in the advanced tech he longed to learn. What he had were discarded parts, a small shed, and relentless curiosity. From scraps and failure, Malik built something extraordinary. This teaches us that where you begin does not define where you can go. Your circumstances may be limiting, but your imagination, your hunger to learn, and your refusal to accept limits, that's where greatness is born. If Malik can create a learning environment from broken machines, what might we accomplish with what we already have? 2. Talent needs opportunity, but opportunity often needs courage. Malik's intelligence wasn't recognized at first. In his school, he was mocked for being poor, dismissed by teachers who saw him as average. But when the opportunity came, through Dr. Granger, it took courage to step into a world far beyond his comfort zone. He didn't wait until he felt ready. He showed up. He tried. He struggled. And he rose. This reminds us that when life opens a door, it won't always feel safe. It won't always be familiar. But we must walk through it anyway. Opportunity alone isn't enough. The bravery to meet it, that's the difference maker. 3. Mockery is the sound of fear, not truth. Throughout Malik's life, he was laughed at for scavenging, for dreaming, for thinking like an engineer before he had the title. Darnell and others represented voices that tried to keep him small. But mockery at its core is often the sound people make when they're afraid of what they don't understand, or when they see someone aiming higher than they dared to. Malik never fought those voices with fists or insults. He answered them with excellence. He let his work speak. And in doing so, he revealed a truth. When you know who you are, mockery loses its power. 4. True intelligence isn't measured by access, it's revealed by ingenuity. Malik didn't grow up with tablets or smartboards or coding tutors. But he taught himself logic, hardware, and security systems using scrap parts and open-source texts. Intelligence isn't about reciting facts or knowing the latest buzzwords. It's about problem solving. It's about adapting. It's about creating something out of what seems like nothing. Malik's genius wasn't born in a lab. It was forged in a shed, fueled by necessity, grit, and passion. That lesson should challenge how we define intelligence in classrooms and in society. Ingenuity and resourcefulness are just as powerful as formal education. 5. You don't have to be older to be wiser. In the university lab, Malik was the youngest student. At the tech competition, he faced older, more experienced opponents. And yet, his vision outpaced them. He didn't second-guess himself just because of his age. He led with clarity. He made decisions under pressure. He listened, adapted, and saw patterns others missed. Too often, we assume wisdom comes only with time. But wisdom also comes from experience, reflection, and the courage to learn from failure. Malik proved that sometimes, the youngest in the room can carry the sharpest insight and the strongest voice. 6. Success should be shared, not hoarded. After his victory in Chicago, Malik didn't disappear into fame or fortune. He immediately thought of Dry Creek, of the kids still stuck in the same cycle he had escaped. His first dream wasn't of luxury or prestige. It was to return. To build a space where others like him could dream, learn, and invent. Success in its highest form is never selfish. It lifts others. Malik's desire to create a lab in his hometown reflects a deep truth. When we rise, we must send the elevator back down. That's how communities are transformed, by those who remember where they came from and invest in those still finding their way. 7. The real circuit you must break is doubt. The story's title, The Circuit Breaker, reflects more than a competition. It's a metaphor. Malik didn't just stop a simulated cyber attack. He broke through the mental circuit of limitation that bound so many around him. He severed the loop of low expectations, systemic barriers, and self-doubt. In every line of code he wrote, in every moment he kept building through hunger and humiliation, Malik shattered the belief that his background defined his destiny. That is the ultimate lesson. The hardest circuit to break is the one inside: fear, insecurity, the lie that says you're not enough. But when you cut that wire, when you override that signal, you unlock a life beyond limits. These 7 lessons form the true backbone of Malik's story, not just a tale of tech and talent, but a blueprint for resilience, purpose, and leadership. No matter where you come from, no matter what tools you have or don't have, there's a circuit inside you waiting to be built. Or broken. And that choice, it's yours. And that brings us to the end of The Circuit Breaker, a story of grit, growth, and the genius that can rise from the most unlikely places. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If this story inspired you, moved you, or reminded you of your own journey, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let us know what stood out to you most. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next powerful story we bring to life. There's more waiting for you, more stories, more lessons, more voices that deserve to be heard. So take a moment to check out the other videos on this channel. Your next spark of inspiration might be just one click away. Until next time, keep believing, keep building, and never stop breaking barriers. This is your channel for stories that matter.